Hi, Dad.
Hi.
So, and hi, everybody tuning in. Thanks so much for being here. You are all joining me and Dad for a conversation, we don't always get a chance to have, which is reflective moment on Music to Life and our journey together through this, because it really has been a journey. So, Liz Sunde, I'm executive director and co-founder of Music to Life. My dad, Noel Paul Stookey of the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary. And we're here to visit with you. And again, thanks for joining us to just talk about this organization that we've created. And
The
you're going to jump
history,
right in, Dad, because
the history, the presence, and the future.
kind
Yeah.
of we'll see if we can cover all those bases. But mainly just we've also just come off our board meeting. We happen to have just come off our board meeting and we do one of these live board meetings a year in Nashville. And the people that are gathered now, right? I mean, when you and I first started,
Hmm.
there were all kinds of interesting folks that we wanted to be connected with. But I think what's happened now is in addition to keeping the artists at our center, because just again, for those of you who might not know, Music to Life connects socially conscious musicians in particular with the resources, the training, the mentorship they need to really step off the stage and into their communities in all kinds of wonderful ways. And so we're helping them partner with organizations. We're helping them find grants to help serve the people that they want to connect with and help. And it crosses all kinds of issues, right? It's the opioid issue, it's the environmental issues, it's youth empowerment. I mean, you name it, our artists are doing it. And so we're really serving them as social entrepreneurs, helping them sustain themselves and sustain help work with communities in need to serve all these issues. So we've come a long way to be able to say that in
Yeah,
10 seconds, 15 seconds, and in the
well,
process.
it,
Yeah.
I'm just realizing, that we're providing a unique platform because the the accustomed way for the public to discover a cause or a musician for that matter in the past has been through the recorded medium and its subsequent issuing over radio, you know. And yet so many of us are realize that just around the corner at the church gathering or maybe at the local coffee house, there is a musician or a group of musicians who in their delivery of their material are describing some concerns that we share mutually as a society. And when that happens, the heart opens up. Suddenly there's more of us concerned than we thought. And the fact that the heart is connecting us makes it more, I don't know, more immediate, more palatable, more recognizable, more achievable, even. Uh, I think that's really the exciting maturation of Music to Life, because as you recall, and many of the people watching today may recall, we got our start just being basically a da 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 talent contest, but with the specific aim
With
of introducing to a large audience, either at the Kerrville Folk Festival or through albums, recorded CDs,
mm,
music of social concern. And we
mhm.
had a great panel, didn't we?
Oh, we had a great panel. Judy Collins and Tom
Tom
Paxton
Paxton. It
and
was great to see Judy again
Josh White
recently.
Jr. Yeah, and we just saw Judy again. Yeah, that was great. But it's going back though, Dad. What's interesting is towards the end of that, and that was in the early 2000s. I mean, towards the end of that, we were starting to ask artists, well, is there anything else going on for you? Like, I understand you have this music of meaning, right? I understand that, but and what else are you doing with that music? And
Mm,
I would say 60 to 70% of the artists who were submitting songs were also saying to us, you know what?
mhm,
I really want to get into the prisons, or I'm really interested in developing this, fill in the blank, sort of a healing circle, a music-based healing circle for,
mm.
parents of kids who have survived kind of substance misuse or who are coming out of substance misuse. And they're basically describing to us they started to describe to us programs that they through which they wanted to use their music. And it was a fascinating, and this was long before we could now where we are now.
Oh, yeah.
We got to know them over time, and they were saying things like, look, we've got these incredible ideas. We're
Well,
talented musicians, we
I
have
think the
these
thing that
ideas.
you, to me, Liz, the thing that really was remarkable was understanding the musician's connection to their immediate neighborhood. Do you know, because
Mm,
I must say, as you know, because of the national success of Peter, Mary, and I, we really spoke to a very large audience simultaneously. So that when we sang Blowing in the Wind at the March in Washington, or we sang it in Selma, or we sang it in a small building in Kent, Ohio, it had an immediacy that was already there. What you've been able to accomplish, and I think, you know, all credit to your vision, is to establish a platform where the musician is a neighbor, you know, is
mm,
an integral part of the neighborhood and
mhm.
is sponsored in many instances by someone also
Yeah,
in the locale. And I
so
think that
true.
that support then works both ways, you know, because it's not just a pie in the sky concept. It's the guy next door, the woman across the street, the child down the block
Yeah.
is involved in this pursuit.
No, I love it so much, and it's local becomes global. That's one of the things that we sort of
Yeah.
talk about. And because some of these ideas are quite extraordinary, like some of the ingenuity, right, of these ideas that are working locally are so extraordinary that you can see them potentially being replicated regionally and nationally. And I'm just thinking about, Benny Esqueda in Toronto. We talk a lot about Wheel It Studios and his mobile recording van that goes through these challenged communities outside of Toronto with very definitive sort of gang boundaries, and he sort of identifies a neutral zone amidst these kind of gang communities and invites youth to cross these boundaries and to gather in this neutral zone. And he's such a skilled educator and facilitator as well as a musician, indigenous, really just borrows from all kinds of traditions. He's a his parents were political refugees from
You know,
Colombia. So
and it occurs to me while you're telling me that what makes that work particularly interesting to me is the realization that in attempting music, particularly music with people that you've never met before,
mm,
presents a kind of vulnerability.
mm,
Uh, because particularly when I think anybody who's watching here today can probably remember the first time they heard their voice played back to them from a recording and giggled or went, "Oh my gosh, do I really sound like that?" Well, that exists still on any level to an artist who is beginning to say, well, that kind of vulnerability between people who have never met each other before is one of the great healing aspects of music because it reduces us, in a sense, all to a stage of innocence where we are more open to one another and to the ideas that other people have. So it's kind of a world peace through
yeah.
vulnerability, what it
But
means.
yes, I think that's well said. And I think the vulnerability extends to, there's something also about music as a medium. Maybe
Hmm.
is it the lyricism of it? I mean, we often get poets, sort of beat poets, and rap artists, and but that notion of kind of laying a track or laying a melody or having there be kind of a supportive,
Hmm.
something to support the narrative that you're trying to communicate. There's something also that's very emotive. And I'm thinking now about Cheryl Kaywood and in Houston, who is gathering parents and caregivers of formerly addicted kids to kind of into a healing circle to not only bring pieces of music that have spoken to them as they've kind of gone through this journey of shame, guilt, kind of angst. It wasn't supposed to be me that had a kid who was addicted. It was supposed to be somebody
Mm.
else, but here I find myself. And so not only bringing pieces of music to speak to them, but also then sort of reaching deep and coming up with their own sense of, well, this would be my song. This would be my kind of expression. And what is it? It goes beyond poetry. I mean, it is poetry, but like, what is it about? There's something about music, right? That sort of carries that, as you said, back to the vulnerability, right? That sort of carries,
Yeah, I mean,
invites.
it really has three aspects, and they all can feed each other, but they don't necessarily have to. I mean, a musical piece with no lyric at all, played in the right circumstance, a violinist, a cellist playing in
Totally.
the middle of a war-torn zone can speak volumes about
Right.
the human heart and hopefulness. But then you add a lyric, and now there's a cognitive summation that's going on, and you must pay attention to what the lyric is saying. Well, you add that to an emotive piece of music, and you have a really binding proposition offered. If
Mhm.
you believe this lyric and you are moved by this music, then you are committed to what the lyric will produce.
Right. And right. And even further, you now have another communication channel through which to share what's going on with you with somebody else. And I think that's
Hmm.
the other piece that constantly happens in our work, certainly in the work that the artists are doing. And then in some of the trainings, for example, that we have where artists are gathered, sometimes they've never met each other. We're in a local community. We're in Tulsa, we're in Boise, we're in Huntsville, and some of these artists have never met each other before. And there's this incredible sense
And
of,
and how do they? What is the circumstance that they meet? It's more than mentoring, isn't it? It's like a what do you call what is music to life's title for those circumstances when they meet?
yeah, well, what I was describing, because I'm going back to what you said about the grassroots, that artists kind of in their local community. So
Yeah.
we do a couple of different kinds of trainings. The one I'm talking about is the musician change maker. These are all accelerators, but this one's a workshop. So it's a 1 day incubator or
Mm,
accelerator. That sometimes means something to folks where artists are coming together, having first been screened for talent across genres, but then secondly, having been asked to share a vision that goes beyond one of their songs, that sort of takes them into the community and has them imagine themselves tackling an issue of change or concern in their
mm,
community through their music. They don't always know how to pitch that to us or express that to us as an entrepreneur yet. I mean, these are all budding social entrepreneurs. They just happen to be musicians. But by the time they're done with
mm,
this training, because the training takes them through, you know, how do you encapsulate your value as, as a social change musician? What does that look like? How do you kind of talk about it? Then how do you take that idea that you have, that kind of notion, and turn it into something that you can actually talk about with someone? Hey, I'd like to, I am the mother, this is true, this happened in Huntsville. I am the mother of a teen who struggles with who has a variety of special needs. We are right now music is how she comes alive. And I am struggling because most of the music that's available to me to listen to with her is Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or sort of young person's music that is done in such a way that it's starting to drive me crazy. And frankly, with her being 13, 14, 15, like I want her to have thoughtful, kind of intentionally packaged music that's going to help
mm,
her kind of open her world. But so I understand the simplicity of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but let's try to figure out how to do that in a cross genre way, in a kind of an unusual multi-instrumental
right,
way. So she
right,
was
right, right.
pitching this to the front of the room to a bunch of mentors up there. Some were from the recording industry, some were from kind of, we're just kind of local business mentors, and they
Mhm.
can now work with her because she wants to do a whole library for caregivers of
Oh,
teens,
that's
right, who
great.
have these special needs. So that's by the end of the day, she came in, we had no idea. We had no idea we knew she was a good musician. We
Mm.
knew she had kind of an idea for working with special needs because we didn't know this was personal to her. And by the end of the day, she was kind of presenting this to a room full of mentors. And she had a couple people saying, yeah, when are you available next week? Like,
All
let's
right.
keep talking about this. This is a great idea. So that's just one right? But that's, yeah.
It occurs to me as you're talking about what Music to Life is offering to these musicians
Yeah.
in terms of form and format and encouragement, that I'll bet some of the people watching today are wondering, well, how do you get your funding? How do you support all this? And as the original funder, I think it's good to point out the fact that the Public Domain Foundation, which is a foundation that I set up to receive the funding from the wedding song, which I always felt I never wrote. I just provided the pathway so that it could get sung at Peter's wedding. And who knew that a simple arrangement of a voice and a guitar would go, top 30, top 10 in the 70s and generate so much income, and still does, because people are still getting married.
Correct, correct,
Right.
correct.
But it began seeding this movement of yours. But where does the money come from? Break it down
Yeah,
for
well,
us.
these days it's not the Public Domain Foundation. I mean, that got us off the ground, and I'm so grateful. I will always be grateful to the
Of
Public
course,
Domain
of
Foundation
course.
to get
I'm
us off the
I'm
ground.
grateful. We're all grateful for that.
Well, no, but I'm making that point because I think there is this sense that, well, Noel Paul Stookey, Peter, Paul, and Mary, the Public Domain Foundation, you must be endowed as an organization. And the reality is we are not endowed. Again, it was seed funding
Yeah.
effectively for what you're now seeing. And the big, and so this was honestly a kind of a bootstrapped organization, again, with this seed funding that about 2 years ago, so we had done, we were doing, you mentioned the early days of the songwriting contest. At one point, Bloomberg Media kind of hired us to do a retrospective. Do you remember sort of Music Matters, of sort of music
Oh
and
yeah.
change? And so
Yep.
we were doing special events for nonprofits. But as soon as artists came to us and said, we need you, we need you to help us. We need you to help us build skills so we can go into our community and be really effective doing this work. And we need you to connect us with, with each other, because it's really lonely out here. Like, as soon as artists started saying to us, like loudly, about 5 years ago, we said,
Mm.
all right, we really need it, as you said, sort of like, so how are we gonna sustain this? And so it was, on the one hand, individual donors. I mean, I think people that really invest in our mission, and we have a number of those now. I'm just so grateful. That number is growing all the time. But also major national kind of visionary funders. And the Mellon Foundation stepped in a couple of years ago and said, we really believe in your training model, and we really think that this can grow. And that was amazing and fantastic. And now we have federal money, right? So the National Endowment for the Arts is stepping in and saying, okay, not only is this important for the country, but it's important as just a model in general of sort of how we're going to care for and engage musicians in these meaningful ways. And now it's the music industry, because now
Mm.
the music industry is saying, right, this is a whole other way for musicians to, I mean, honestly, I think it's a little bit of a win-win for them, because this is opening up musicians to new kinds of audiences. It is. It's getting them into community. It's getting them connected in some meaningful ways. So the music industry says, well, so this is an opportunity for our client. Let's say if this is an artist that's signed with a major label, you can help our client, raise their profile. We're doing it, and the artist is doing it for community impact. But a major label might look at that and go, this is great. They're gonna, their impact, their visibility
Mhm.
gets raised. That means maybe we'll sell some more some more songs. Maybe they'll be invited to speak on a as part of a talk show. Maybe we'll be able to measure impact in their community. That's fine with me. Like, everybody can have a way that this benefits. But I love that we are increasingly becoming kind of a business to business organization, where the training model can really help artists who are signed, even, with these major labels, kind of
Mm. Mhm.
do good work because they want to, and then have the labels recognize that investing in their artists. That's been a big surprise for me, actually, that the professional development and leadership development of newly signed artists among major record labels is not necessarily something that's assumed, or that happens. And we are very definitively a leadership and professional development training that I think is going to help more artists be successful as signed art, as newly signed artists with record companies. So that's a whole other level of our training program that I'm really excited about. That I know that funding will. That's a whole other way to fund our model. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it's good stuff. It's really good stuff. So any what are we thinking about for the future? I mean,
Well, I suppose because everything has become streaming and immediate, and I think probably a web presence is going to be more and more important, whether it's as a jukebox of concerns. I mean,
sure.
such a thing would have been unheard of, 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But maybe Music to Life will be able to, as it continues to grow, present each of these artists periodically online simultaneously so that people can log on, find out who the artist is, hear the piece of music, be moved by it, contribute to the organization that the artist represents, as well as support Music to Life. I
Well,
think that the future is going to be technologically advanced, and we probably can't know the details.
well, it's interesting. I well, as you can imagine, I have a lot of future thoughts about this, and I think you're right about that. I will say, I'll just give a quick plug now for this actually has less to do with our artists and has more to do with themed playlists, but we do have about 19 themed playlists on our YouTube channel that each
Mhm.
of which tackles a different topic, right? Sort of civil rights, domestic violence, uh, whatever,
Mhm.
women's rights, LGBTQIA, like whatever it is. Like so and that is sort of higher level artists. In terms of the artists that we're working with now, a couple of things. We have programs like a speakers bureau, for example, to connect in a kind of a meaningful way to sort of push our artists out into workshop settings, classroom settings, as
Mhm.
keynote speakers, because these are incredible. I mean, they're talented artists. They're also amazing educators and facilitators. So getting them out that way. And I also think about like our annual Pass the Mic and how we're getting to a point with, we have what, 400 artists across 42 states, 300 communities. Over half of them are artists of color. And it's across genres and generations too, right? So we're getting to the point where we have this and all the issues, we've only mentioned a few issues, but many, many issues that they're tackling. So we're getting to a point where I think we're a really solid and very rich source of next generation talent, right? That's
Mhm.
active, that's incredibly smart, incredibly talented. So, like our annual program that we do with Pass the Mic, where we connect with 3 seasoned artists of change, that and have them kind of proverbially pass the mic to these emerging artists of change. I feel like there's a real future in that for us too, because at one point we were talking about, for example, the social justice impact awards, social justice music impact awards or something like
Uh-huh.
that. And I
Uh-huh.
I know the Grammys experimented with a kind of just a 1 year, they had a Song of Conscience category, but I
Yeah.
really think that there's a future for some kind of special programming around the honoring of those that have been in this space and the passing of the torch to those who are coming up in this
Yeah.
space,
I think that's
on a
great.
national level. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah. I think
So
that's great. I hadn't really thought of that before, but yeah, when you think of the Grammy and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a lot of people think that the music of concern is going to be very dry, going to be very acoustic, the
mm,
kind of thing that's sung around campfires or on marches, right? And the explosion of conscience in music, which had its popular revelation in the 60s, has continued. And so the fact that this music is out there happening in all different genres is not only an opportunity, but sort of a responsibility now of Music to Life, to
absolutely.
make sure that people understand how broadly it's being expressed.
So true. And I feel like we're getting tapped. I mean, last summer I was on the road, with doing panels and presentations and all of that. So I think we are getting to be known as a source of, information about what this new, sometimes we call it the new music for change ecosystem, sort of what this looks like, how
Mm.
who's out there, what the artists are doing, the kinds of impact they're making. And yeah, yeah, it's great. It's great. So, Dad,
So
it's so
what's
good to
going to
talk to
happen?
you.
So what's happening on this show? I mean,
This is what's happening on this show. It's the sh- it's why do I suddenly feel like Seinfeld? It's the show about this. Not about nothing. It's a show about this. So yeah, I'm looking forward to stepping into this our year. Just so you all know, we're just about to wrap our, so you all watching know, we're just about to wrap our Give and Grow campaign. It's our spring fundraising campaign, ends on June 30th. And and after that we step into our next fiscal year. So that's why Dad and I are kind of reflecting and looking back and thinking about what's next. And yeah, yeah. It's I'm really looking forward to, just random, but one of the communities I'm really looking forward to working with, hopefully in early 25, is a community outside of Las Vegas, the city of Henderson. And they came to me initially saying, we've got to do something about this fentanyl issue. And, can you help us mobilize, these grassroots musicians to just kind of come up with, we don't need another benefit concert. What we need is some hands, rolling up sleeves around this and all hands
mhm,
on deck. And what can we come up
mhm.
with? How can music? And I'm looking forward, because what's happening now is communities are coming to us, right? Like it's a shift. And I love to see that, because we can be very creative. This model is very adaptable. And we've already talked about how it works in the kind of major label world. It works in communities, it works online, it works live, as well as virtually. So I don't know,
Yeah,
just
yeah,
good stuff. Good stuff. Good
yeah.
stuff.
It is. It is. The visibility helps a great deal.
Visibility helps. So I think that's it for now. I look forward to having more of these conversations with you, Dad. And
Well, why don't you come visit us this summer then?
I think that's what I'll
How about the
do.
first week of August?
Sounds good. Yeah, so I don't know that we have any particular quote to share to
To
wrap
sign
this
off
up,
with?
to sign
Mhm.
off with, except
Okay.
grateful that everybody's here, grateful that everybody's listening. And
Well,
there's a
no,
place,
no,
yeah.
no. I like, no, 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 no. You do have a
No,
sign off.
I
Yeah,
do.
you do.
Okay.
You do.
What?
It's
Yeah.
that phrase that you say when people say, "What is music to life?" And you say something
Ooh.
about um, um, to build is um, oh, it's the logo that's down the bottom of all of the music
Oh,
to,
revolutionizing the role that musicians can play in social change.
and bringing their bold vision to
Oh, their
community.
bold vision. Yeah. To community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bringing their
Okay.
bold
Here's to
vision.
bold
That sounds
vision.
great. Here's to bold visions. Love you, Dad. Great
Love
to be
you.
with you. Okay.